At 110 degrees in the high desert, light itself begins to feel like a physical force. It shimmers off the sand in pale waves, rises along canyon walls, and presses against anything man has built. By mid-afternoon, even shadows seem to retreat, shrinking against stone like animals trying to survive the sun. On days like this, a frontier wooden cabin doesn't just warm, it bakes. Inside the single-room cabin, the air trembles in front of the camera. Sweat beads on the shelves before it ever forms on skin. A water bucket sits on the floor, surface rippling, not from motion, but from the rising thermal currents that twist the air like invisible hands. A young settler family tries to rest. They breathe shallowly, every inhale heavier than the last. The mother lifts her hand and touches the western wall. She jerks back as though it were a stove. The cabin is hotter inside than out, far hotter. The boards have absorbed the sun's fury for hours, storing it, magnifying it, trapping it. One of the children starts to cry, not from pain, but from the strange, suffocating exhaustion that comes when a house becomes a kiln. The father opens the door, but the moment he cracks it, a new problem strikes. The air outside might be scorching, but it feels cooler than the air inside. The cabin is a trap. The structure radiates heat, as if it were a forge. The boards gleam with it. Dust swirls in slow spirals around the steps, each little whirlwind rising from pockets of superheated ground. Then the camera shifts. A few hundred yards away stands a low, earth-colored structure, unassuming, quiet, shaped more like a natural formation than a house. Its walls are thick. Its roofline casts deep shade. Its doorway faces east, hidden from the violent afternoon sun. This is a Pueblo adobe home, and inside waits the man who knows why it stays cool. The moment the camera crosses the threshold, everything changes. The light dims, the world softens, the air is still, heavy in a comforting way, like a quiet stone cellar or the inside of a canyon cave. Rafael Tenorio runs his hand along the interior wall. He's in his mid-30s, steady-eyed, with the calm, deliberate posture of a man raised in landscapes that punish carelessness. He wears lightweight, traditional cloth, a woven band around his hair, and the dust of the high desert still clinging to his boots. When he presses his palm to the adobe, there's no heat, only coolness, a cold reservoir drawn from the night before. He gestures for the family to step inside, keeping his voice low so they don't panic. Sit, drink water, rest against the shaded wall. Your cabin is fighting the sun. This one, he places his hand on the adobe again, is shaped by it. The mother looks around in disbelief. The adobe home feels 20, maybe 25 degrees cooler than outside. It feels survivable. It feels safe. Raphael walks to the small, high-set window. A sliver of sky glows through. No glare, no direct sunlight, just reflected blue. This home was built with the sun in mind, he says. Yours was built in its way. He motions toward the family's distant cabin, its form shimmering in the superheated afternoon. Even from here, through the wavering air, the cabin looks wrong, bright, overexposed, strained. The boards bow slightly, the nails expanding, every surface radiating light. Back inside the adobe home, Raphael speaks softly, but with the certainty of someone repeating an old truth. A house in this land must hold the night when the day tries to destroy it. The child presses his back against the adobe wall and shivers with relief. The camera glides slowly across the interior. Deep shadows untouched by day, thick walls 2 feet wide, tiny windows positioned with purpose. Every line, every corner, every surface was built with the desert in mind, not against it. Then we return to the wooden cabin. The empty air ripples like boiling water. A wooden cup on the table tilts as expanding air currents push beneath it. The walls pulse faintly with the stored heat they cannot release. This is the crisis. A home designed for forests has been placed in a desert that punishes anything unprepared. The settlers didn't know. They built fast, built familiar, built what they understood. And the land answered. Back inside the adobe interior with Raphael, he continues. But here, The walls do not fight the sun. They understand it. He looks toward the doorway. The late afternoon light forms a soft amber frame around him, diffused, harmless, almost gentle. Then the narrator enters. The wooden cabin traps heat within minutes, but the adobe delays it for hours. The cabin radiates like a furnace, but the adobe absorbs heat slow as stone. We begin to understand this isn't magic. This isn't guesswork. This is engineering. Indigenous engineering perfected over 1,000 years. And the settlers are beginning to realize they built the wrong kind of home in the wrong kind of land. But the adobe's coolness wasn't even its greatest secret. That secret lay hidden in walls, thicker than a man's arm. The coolness of the adobe is not an accident. It is the visible result of a long, careful conversation between people and place. Rafael Tenorio stands in the heart of the room, his hand tracing the curve where floor meets wall. He speaks as one who has slept in these rooms through the hottest months and felt the slow, patient exchange of heat with the earth. Feel that, he says. His voice is low. A single hand on the surface tells you more than a thermometer sometimes. He presses his palm flat. The wall answers with a steady, almost wet coolness, a temperature that does not leap with the sun, but moves like a tide, slow, predictable, measured. Wall reveals dense, packed clay, interwoven straw fibers, occasional stones embedded like deliberate bones. Raphael points to the layers. That straw, he says, isn't filler. It gives tensile strength. It cracks, yes, but the fibers stop the splits from running like a river. He turns to a measured diagram, propped against the wall. Simple lines showing thickness. 18 inches to 2 feet, typical for family homes. Some ceremonial structures reaching even thicker. This is not rustic or crude. It is calibrated. A wall that thick is a storehouse of energy. It's called thermal mass, mass that takes the sun's heat slowly and returns it even slower. In a desert that swings wildly between 110 degrees by day and cool nights, that delay is everything. Raphael holds a sun-warmed brick for a moment, then sets it down on a shaded stone. During the day, he explains, the wall soaks up heat like a slow sponge. It eats the sun's bite, holds it, and only lets it go when the night is cold and the sky gives back what it took. He taps the brick. The sound is dull, heavy. You hear that? Dense. Quantitative detail matters here. A 2-foot thick adobe wall, packed and maintained, will increase the thermal lag of a room by many hours, so that the peak interior temperature occurs well after the sun has already fallen. In practical terms, for people who must sleep through a desert night, that can mean the difference between suffering through the hottest evening or finding restorative coolness. Field tests from like environments, Raphael gestures to nearby ruins where measurements were taken, show interior differentials, commonly in the range of 20 to 30 degrees, under extreme sun when compared with thin wooden structures. But thermal mass is only one piece. The adobe system is clever in its marriage of materials and details. Raphael kneels and scoops a handful of packed earth, fine clay, a little sand, a tangle of straw. This mix, he says, gives the walls both mass and breath. Clay holds moisture, straw holds shape. The wall can absorb a little humidity during the night and let it go slowly through the day. That slow evaporation cools the inner surface further. He crushes the handful, and the texture falls apart like dark sand. It's physics and memory. The window high in the wall admits only a sliver of light, sometimes a shutter or woven reed fitting controls angle and flow. Air moves through courtyards and low doorways in predictable channels. The builders oriented entrances to catch morning breezes and reject the late-day blast. Raphael draws a sun path across a simple clay diagram, showing how the house's thick walls and tiny apertures cast each other in shadow when the sun is strongest. When the sun is high, he says, we keep the living parts shaded. When it slides low, the wall warms, but the interior stays cooler. He points to a sheltered courtyard, its bottom shaded, the stones cool to the touch. The courtyard is a machine, Raphael says. It traps shade, creates evaporative pockets, if there is water, and becomes a staging place for the night. We return to the settlers watching instruments. Arrows show heat rising in the wooden cabin almost immediately. The adobe's internal gauge follows hours later. A child wipes his brow as the family realizes the simple numbers of survival. Where are you watching from right now? If this is your first time hearing about thermal mass, tell us in the comments. And if you care about living better in heat, consider joining us. Tomorrow's story will show how these principles were adapted in places far from the Southwest, places you might not expect. Rafael demonstrates a repair technique, repointing a thin vertical crack with a slurry of clay and fine straw, tamped with the heel of a hand. Maintenance, he says, is part of the design. If you patch and keep the surface sealed from rapid rain, the wall will last. If you neglect it, the wall will fail. Examples of successful repairs play side by side with the slow ruin of abandoned homes, where unchecked erosion has thinned the wall and shortened its thermal life. This is not a single invention. It is accumulated wisdom, centuries of trial, subtle alterations, and a profound respect for the land's yearly rhythm. Raphael standing in a doorway, hands on either side, feeling the temperature difference between room and sun. He does not boast. He simply points at the wall and offers a final, quiet fact. A home here must be patient to be comfortable, he says. It must store the day and give it back on its own time. The secret is simple. Make the house think slowly while the sun thinks fast. Rafael Tenorio steps into the early morning light, and for a moment, the world feels forgiving. Dawn in the desert is a brief mercy, a blue-tinged quiet before the sun becomes a tyrant again. He walks toward the east-facing entrance of the adobe home, the doorway already cast in long, protective shade. The air here is cool, almost cold, and Raphael pauses under the lintel, letting that coolness slide past his shoulders like a second shirt. This, he says softly, is where the house begins to win. Most frontier settlers built as they always had. Doors facing whatever direction was convenient, windows placed for light rather than survival. But in the Southwest, light can be the very thing that kills a home. As the sun rises, we see thin beams slide across the adobe's outer wall. The bulk of the building absorbs them slowly, spreading the heat through its mass. But the interior? It remains shadowed, untouched. Its windows are small, mere slits, which were dismissed by settlers as primitive or insufficient. Yet each narrow aperture is perfectly placed to admit only reflected brightness, never the direct scorching rays. It's not how much light enters, Raphael says, but what kind of light. He moves his hand into the beam. Pale, gentle, safe. Indirect light cools, direct light attacks. We shift to a wide shot of a frontier wooden cabin built on open ground. Its large glass windows reflect sunlight like shields, but instead of deflecting heat, they draw it in. Thick bars of harsh yellow spill across the floorboards. It is not even mid-morning, and yet the cabin is already warming fast. A thermometer on the wall ticks upward, not quickly but steadily, inexorably. A large south or west-facing window in the desert is like a wound. The building bleeds coolness. Back to the interior Pueblo courtyard. Raphael walks into a courtyard surrounded by adobe walls. The ground here is stone and dust, but most importantly, shade. At this hour, the courtyard is a perfect thermal pocket. Cool air pools here, forming an invisible reserve of comfort that the home will draw from later in the day. A single mesquite tree leans over one corner, its branches carefully encouraged to grow in ways that provide seasonal shade. This is no accident, it is part of the building. He kneels and places his hand on the shaded stone. This is colder than the inside of the house, he explains. This is where the night hides. The settlers watch Raphael trace the courtyard's function on a dirt diagram. Shade traps cold air. Thick walls keep it from dissipating too quickly. Narrow passages funnel breezes morning and evening. Solid outer walls block harsh, lateral afternoon sunlight. You don't fight the heat from inside the house, Raphael says. You fight it before it reaches the walls. Now we tilt upward. Above the courtyard, the roofline extends further than the walls. The eaves cast deep shade, another intentional geometry. They block summer's steep, punishing overhead sun, while admitting winter's shallower rays when warmth is welcome. The adobe house is a shade machine, engineered not through math on paper, but through generations watching the sun creep across the same sky. Raphael steps into a low breezeway, a space so narrow the air cannot sit still. Morning wind slides through like water, creating a brief, gentle, cooling draft. When you make the breeze move through a throat like this, he says, standing between two thick walls, it speeds up. Even a light wind becomes a tool. He gestures toward a small opening in the outer wall, a vent just above knee height. Air flows in here, rises as it warms, and escapes through a tiny high window on the opposite side, creating a natural convection system. Other families built their homes tight, Raphael says. Here we build them to breathe. The settler's cabin, meanwhile, takes everything directly. Light pours in unfiltered. Heat strikes the boards at full force. There is no courtyard to buffer it, no vent-to-window convection, no deep entryway shadow, no carefully calculated angles. The cabin was made for speed. The adobe was made for survival. As we cut back to Raphael, the sun climbs higher. The courtyard is still shaded, but the outer desert light grows sharper, throwing white slashes of brightness across the ground. The edges of the adobe walls flare briefly, but the interior stays cool. Look at the sky, Raphael says. The camera follows his gesture. Above, the sun is now a fierce white disk. The heat radiating down feels almost visible, but along the wall, shadows cling stubbornly, held by deliberate architectural choices. Choices made not by chance, but by generations who studied the land's behavior. Raphael steps back inside. Light filters through the small windows. Weak, soft, never direct. Dust motes float softly in the beam, drifting like snow. The coolness remains. He turns to the settlers who now stand inside with him. One wipes his brow, amazed. It's cooler in here than in the cabin, even when the doors open, he whispers. Raphael nods. Shade first, mass second, air last. In that order, you tamed the desert. The settlers glance at each other. This is not how they were taught to build. Their traditions come from forests, rivers, damp climates. Here, those rules crumble under the sun. But cooling a house in the desert isn't just about blocking the day's heat. It's about turning the night into a tool. Night in the desert arrives like the turning of a page, sudden, silent, and absolute. One moment the land is a white-hot anvil. The next it becomes a cold basin, draining away the day's fever. Stars emerge in fierce clarity, as if the sky itself is frostbitten. The adobe house breathes in that darkness like a living thing. Rafael Tenorio places both palms flat against the outside wall. Earlier, under the afternoon sun, this surface was warm, not burning, not dangerous, but definitely touched by heat. Now, under the moon, the warmth seeps away into the open air. A faint mist of condensation clings to parts of the clay. The night gently pulls heat from the adobe's mass. This is the moment, Raphael says quietly, when the house makes itself ready for tomorrow. A wooden cabin heats quickly, but it also cools quickly. That seems like a good thing, until you realize that quick cooling means nothing is stored, nothing is saved. The moment the sun rises again, the cabin starts from zero and loses instantly. Inside, the thin walls equalize with the outdoor air in minutes. If the day was blistering, the interior remains warm for hours and then drops too fast, giving almost no stable comfort window. The cabin breathes shallowly. It doesn't remember anything. Now back to the adobe. Raphael walks into the adobe home with a lantern. The interior is cool. It is always cool at night, sometimes almost cold. The thick walls that protected the occupants during the day now release their stored heat in a slow, measured exhale. If one were to touch the wall before dawn, it might feel just a little above the temperature of the air, never hot, never unstable, just a patient, steady warmth. This release of heat is what sets the stage for the next day. The adobe wall empties itself so it can be filled again. Raphael opens a small vent near the floor, then lifts the latch on a high window. The difference in height creates a nighttime draft. Cold air slides in low. The warmer indoor air rises to escape through the top. It is passive, silent, perfect. This is how you cool a house without touching it, he says. You let physics work while you sleep. Arrows show cold air entering, warm air leaving. Adobe walls slowly releasing their energy. Every motion is gentle, unforced, timed by the land. Raphael gestures to the settlers standing at the threshold. Come, he says, put your hands on the wall. Tell me what you feel. The father touches it. His eyes widen. It's cooler than the air. Raphael nods. Yes, and by sunrise it will be colder still. By the time the day begins, the wall will be a reservoir of coolness. When the sun strikes it, the adobe will take hours to warm through. During that time, the interior remains steady, untouched by the violence outside. The sky softens. The desert holds its breath. Cold air clings to the stones, and dust, pooling in courtyards, gathering under eaves. This cold air is precious. It is the memory of night. As dawn light brightens, Raphael steps outside and stands on the cool courtyard floor. This is what our homes save for us, he says. This moment of cold. This is the gift we use for the entire day. Sunlight creeps along the outer wall. Slowly, predictably, but the wall is full of the night's breath. It resists, it delays. Inside, the settlers sit in quiet awe. The interior remains cool long after sunrise. The air feels like early morning even when the clock moves toward noon. This is the brilliance. You don't just cool the house now. You cool it for later. You store the cold of night so the day cannot take it from you. The settlers' wooden cabin warms almost instantly. Sunlight spills across the floorboards. The temperature rises fast. The cabin forgets the night almost immediately. Inside the adobe home, meanwhile, the walls remain cold enough to make the air feel fresh, even with the door open. Raphael places a small bowl of water near the inner wall. Its surface stays unbroken. No shimmer of rising heat, no trembling of thermal currents. This is the calm of a house that knows the sun, he whispers. Nighttime adobe cool releasing, daytime adobe delaying. The adobe home is timed like a heartbeat. Night gathers coolness, day spends it slowly, and every cycle repeats. As the settlers watch this quiet miracle unfold, realization dawns. Their wooden cabin was never designed to participate in this rhythm. It stands against the desert, while the adobe stands with it. One of the settlers turns to Raphael. We built our home to resist the heat, he says. Raphael replies, and we built ours to understand it. And once you learn the rhythm of heat and cold, you can survive the desert without fighting it. By mid-morning, the settler's cabin has once again become an oven. Sun hammering through the big windows, heat rising off the floorboards like invisible steam. After days of enduring this cycle, exhaustion has set into their bones. The father wipes sweat from his brow with trembling fingers. The mother fumbles with a cloth dipped in warm water, trying to cool her children even as the air dries each rag in minutes. Rafael Tenorio watches them from the shaded archway of the adobe courtyard. He has seen this pattern many times before. Outlanders building the homes they know, only to learn that the desert cares nothing for their comfort, traditions, or assumptions. We can show you another way, Raphael says gently. The father hesitates, pride warring with fear. Then a particularly sharp crack echoes from a sun-warped beam in the wooden cabin, and the decision is made. Teach us, he said. We'll do it your way. Buckets splash. Hands plunge into cool mud. Straw is added in small handfuls. Not too much, not too little. Raphael stresses this repeatedly, explaining how excess straw weakens the bond, while too little makes the mix brittle. The father kneads the mixture with both arms, prized at its weight. Feel it, Raphael says. It should be like thick dough, strong, heavier than it looks. The settlers begin shaping the adobe into bricks. This is not rushed work. It is rhythmic, almost meditative. The wet clay pack squelches under pressure. Excess water drains slowly from wooden molds. A row of freshly shaped bricks glistens in the sun. They were slow at first. Their hands were clumsy. The desert wind dried their bricks unevenly. But they learned. Raphael guides them as they begin replacing parts of the cabin's west wall, the hottest side of the home. Instead of tearing everything down, they use a hybrid method: wood for framing, adobe for mass. He shows them how to apply a layer of earth plaster over the existing boards, creating a first barrier that evens the temperature swings. The mother runs her hand over the finished patch, surprised by its solidity. "It already feels cooler," she says. "It will," Raphael replies, "even before we finish the full wall." They erect a low adobe barrier several feet away from the cabin, positioned carefully to block the late afternoon sun, while allowing air to pass above and around. This secondary shade wall creates a pocket of cooler air between itself and the cabin, reducing direct solar assault. In less than a day, the wooden structure ceased to act alone. Now it had allies: walls that understood heat, shade that obeyed geometry, mass that stored the night. The settlers work into the late afternoon. Dust coats their shirts. Clay dries on their hands. Sweat runs freely. And yet, something shifts. No longer are they fighting the heat. They are working with the materials that thrive here. When the sun begins to fall, they step inside the newly hybridized cabin. The temperature is markedly lower. Not as cool as the full adobe home, but no longer dangerous. No longer suffocating. The children breathe easier. The air feels less hostile. The father stands in stunned silence. "We did this in one day," he whispers. Raphael nods. "In one day you let the land teach you something." Wooden cabin before, climbing above 110 degrees interior. Wooden cabin after adobe additions, interior now 25 degrees lower. The numbers speak more loudly than any argument. Behind them, the sky turns copper and violet. A warm wind blows gently through the doorway. The added thermal mass of the adobe-coated wall begins its slow work, absorbing heat, shifting its temperature curve, changing the cabin's entire thermal rhythm. They shape bricks in shade. They create narrow vents at floor level. They add a small overhang above the western window. They apply earth plaster to seal cracks. They lay stones along the base to reduce splash erosion. They integrate a shallow courtyard pocket beside the home. With each improvement, the cabin behaved less like a frontier shack and more like a desert home. By nightfall, they sit with Raphael outside, eating a simple meal in the twilight. The children run their hands along the newly set adobe wall, amazed at its cooling touch. The mother smiles in relief. The father turns to Raphael. "All this time," he says, "I thought the desert hated us." Raphael shakes his head gently. "The desert hates no one, but it will punish those who do not listen." His voice is calm, never superior, never gloating, just true. He stands and brushes dust from his hands. The stars glow in the deepening sky. The temperatures fall fast. "Tomorrow," he says, "we finish the shade walls and fix your roofline. After that," he nods toward their cabin, "your home will begin to understand the sun." As the settlers watch him walk back toward the adobe dwelling, they share a look, one part gratitude, one part awakening. They have crossed a threshold. They have chosen respect over resistance. The heat taught them a harder lesson than any man could, and the adobe showed them the way forward. Two structures stand side by side at the edge of a modern southwestern town. On the left, a contemporary house, glass, steel, drywall, AC units humming. On the right, a preserved ancestral Pueblo adobe, quiet, thick-walled, timeless. The sun is rising, and already the temperature climbs. Heat ripples above the pavement. In a century obsessed with cooling machines, the ancient house still wins the morning. A thermal comparison appears. The modern home glows orange and red within minutes. Its thin walls conduct and radiate heat. The AC unit clicks on early, working before breakfast has even begun. Meanwhile, the adobe shows a deep, calm blue. A cold reservoir from the night still saturates its mass. Rafael Tenorio holds an infrared thermometer. He checks the surfaces: concrete, glass, metal, and the numbers rise sharply. Then he places the thermometer against the adobe wall. The reading stays low. These walls, he says, are older than the country, but they still beat the machines. He taps the wall with his knuckles. It is not about resisting heat, he says. It's about timing it. Modern desert cities appear: Phoenix, Tucson, El Paso. Vast stretches of rooftops shimmering in sun. Streets bake, air conditioners roar, power lines hum with strain. In the high desert, temperatures rise faster than infrastructure can keep up. When the grid fails, comfort fails with it. But there was a time when comfort did not depend on wires. Inside the adobe home, soft reflected light fills the space. Rafael walks slowly, evaluating each part with practical familiarity. These design ideas still matter, he says. People think they belong to the past, but the sun hasn't changed. He gestures to the key lessons. Lesson 1. Build thick, build dense, high-mass materials. Adobe rammed earth, compressed earth block. Store coolness. Modern insulated drywall cannot do this. Foam blocks heat, but stores nothing. When the AC stops, the house flips instantly, from cool to hot. Thermal mass smooths the curve, Rafael explains. It lowers the highs and lifts the lows. Lesson 2. Shape the shade. Shading geometry. Porches, eaves, screens, courtyards. Does more than block light. It creates microclimates. A courtyard shaded at dawn is cold. By afternoon, it becomes a reservoir of comfort. Rafael steps into the preserved courtyard. Early light touches only the upper portions of the wall. The stone at his feet remains shadowed and cool. We use this pocket to breathe, he says. The night lives longest here. Lesson 3. Use the sky like a tool. The desert sky loses heat like a cracked bowl. By midnight, it turns into a massive cooling sink. Adobe houses use this drop by opening high vents, allowing warm air to escape, drawing in night air low. The system is stable, predictable, free. Machines fight the heat. Adobe works with it. Lesson 4. Bring back courtyard. Culture sketches of modern homes appear. Narrow breezeways, double-layered shade walls, inward-facing courtyards, thickened western walls, rooflines tuned to solstice angles. These are not old ideas, he says. They are eternal ideas. A family walks into the adobe home with Rafael. They expect darkness or primitive discomfort, but instead find warm light, soft textures, and a steady interior climate that feels almost insulated from the world outside. A little girl touches the wall and smiles. It feels alive, she says. Rafael kneels beside her. It is alive, he answers. Inside this wall is the breath of last night. Muted street noise outside barely reaches through the thick walls. In a modern architect's office, blueprints lie on a wide table. Passive house plans, rammed earth homes, hybrid adobe steel constructions, experimental desert dwellings. One blueprint features walls nearly 18 inches thick, a deliberate revival of ancient logic. We thought technology would save us from harsh environments, but people like Rafael reminded us some environments don't need saving. They need understanding. A comparison begins. A power outage at a modern home versus an adobe home. When the electricity shuts off, the modern home becomes unbearable in minutes. But the adobe? Hours pass. The interior cool remains. Its temperature line barely changes. 1,000 years of inheritance, and the design still outperforms what we call efficient. Rafael stands beside the adobe doorway at noon. The sun is white and merciless. The air ripples. Asphalt glows like a hot plate. But Rafael remains in the shade of the thick wall, the outline of his figure sharp against its cool interior. In the desert, comfort comes from knowledge, not power. He steps back inside. His boots echo softly on the hard-packed floor. The transition from noon fire to cave-like calm takes less than 2 steps. The settlers from earlier appear in a flashback montage, now weeks into their adobe hybrid. The mother mending a small vent, the father shaping new bricks, the children playing in the shaded yard. Their cabin no longer cooks them. They have adopted the rhythm. Raphael's voice carries, "When you build with the land, you are never without help." Nighttime desert sky fills the scene, stars blazing. This lesson is older than nations, older than borders, and more relevant now than ever. And the final lesson of the adobe lies not in comfort, but in what it teaches us about belonging. The first light of morning spills across the desert in long, honey-colored streaks. The sun has not yet gathered its full strength, and for a brief moment, the adobe home stands in perfect balance. Cool walls holding the memory of night, warm light sliding across their surfaces without penetrating. Inside, the air still carries a faint chill. Rafael Tenorio steps into the doorway, the edge of the sun catching on his cheek. He pauses there, the way a man might pause at the threshold of a sacred place. In many ways, he is. The desert does not give comfort freely. It gives it to those who listen. The settler's hybrid cabin stands nearby, weeks after their first attempts at rebuilding. The wooden cabin is nearly unrecognizable. Its west wall shines with a fresh layer of earth plaster. A shade wall stands sturdily a few feet away, casting deep afternoon shadow. Small vents open near the floor. A modest overhang shields the biggest window, and the interior, once a furnace, is stable, quiet, almost serene. The settlers come outside into the early morning light. They breathe deeply, not with the exhaustion of people bracing for another brutal day, but with the slow calm of people who finally understand their environment. The mother runs her hand along the cool earth-plastered wall. She smiles, a quiet, grateful smile. The father stands beside her, his eyes finding Rafael across the courtyard. "We've never slept like this before," he says. "Not since we arrived." Rafael nods with a warmth that carries no pride, only recognition. "The desert gave you the same gift it gives us," he says. Night. The children wander across the courtyard stones, still cold enough to make them gasp. They chase each other along the shaded lines, each step sending up faint echoes beneath the archways. A cool home changes more than the day. It changes the people. Ancient Pueblo dwellings carved into red stone cliffs stand unchanged. Their walls are thick and unmoving. Light slides over them, just as it did centuries ago. The adobe breathes. The courtyards gather cold. The small windows are wisely placed, never careless. Raphael places his palm on one of the ancient walls. The texture is the same. Earth, straw, time. He speaks as though addressing something alive. "My people built these because they belonged here," he says, "and the land accepted their work." Modern homes using revived Pueblo designs appear. Thick, insulated earth walls, shaded courtyards, long rooflines for solar protection, small, strategically oriented windows, nighttime ventilation paths, hybrid adobe concrete mass structures. These ideas are not relics. They are answers. A family walks into the adobe home with Raphael. They expect darkness or primitive discomfort, but instead find warm light, soft textures, and a steady interior climate that feels almost insulated from the world outside. A little girl touches the wall and smiles. "It feels alive," she says. Raphael kneels beside her. "It is alive," he answers. "Inside this wall is the breath of last night." In the open desert, heat rises, power lines hum, cities shimmer with exhaustion, but the adobe home stands still, patient, assured. It is a peculiar thing that the oldest design becomes the future again. But perhaps it is not peculiar at all. A child smooths a handful of earth plaster into a small crack under Raphael's guidance. "Does the house remember us?" the child asks. "It remembers every night it holds for you," Raphael says. The adobe home stands framed in the vast desert, unmoving, enduring, wise. In contrast, the wooden cabin, though improved, looks lighter, newer, still learning. One structure belongs to the land. The other is trying to. And so the adobe remains, a cool sanctuary, a patient teacher, an enduring symbol. In a world racing toward hotter years, louder machines, and deeper demands, some answers wait quietly in walls made of earth. Answers built not with haste, but with understanding. Raphael turns toward the entrance. His expression is reflective, part pride, part hope, part something older. The wind stirs his hair as he steps back into the cool interior of the adobe home. A house is only as wise as the land it listens to, and the adobe, timeless, steady, still listens. If forgotten knowledge like this lives in your heart, the way it lives in these walls, consider joining us. There are more stories, older, deeper, quieter, waiting in the desert wind.